So now we're going to take a look at primitives inside of ZBrush, as well as the deformer set that comes with them. In previous versions of ZBrush, you would access your primitives by going to the Tool menu and then the Tool palette. And here under 3D Meshes, you would find a selection of primitives. So for example, if I went to the Ring 3D tool, I could draw it on the canvas, go into Edit mode. Then I would have to open the Initialize menu to change things like the radius and the coverage and the scale. Then when I was ready to start sculpting, it would give me the message that this was not a polymesh. I would actually have to change this into a polymesh 3D to sculpt on it. What's more, if we go into frame mode, you can see the topology is not really desirable. The ends of the cylinders have poles on them. The ends of the spheres have poles. And those triangles can cause real problems when you subdivide and start to sculpt. So ZBrush has changed this. They've created a whole new suite of primitives and included them with Gizmo 3D. So I'm going to go to the Tool palette and I'm going to select the Polymesh star. The Polymesh star is just kind of a catch-all generic empty mesh. You see it referenced a lot in ZBrush tutorials. If you need to import a new mesh in, oftentimes people will select the Polymesh star. I'll now go to either Move, Scale, or Rotate to enable the gizmo. And I'm going to click the Customize gear, and now I can access these primitives. We'll start with the polycylinder. So if I select it, it has now replaced the star with this cylinder primitive. I'm going to turn off frame mode. You can see it in grayscale. Now for our primitives, we have these cone operators here. If I click and drag this one, it'll change the resolution down X or down Z, and you can see that it immediately changes into frame mode to show me that update. The same is true here for X. Notice also that the end caps are all quad. These remain quads. So when we're done, click the gear icon again and then just select Gizmo 3D. And now we can go ahead and start sculpting on this. If I go to the Move brush, for example, I can start moving this. Go to the Standard brush, I can start sculpting, I can start adding subdivisions, etc. Something that's interesting that you can do with the gizmo, though, if there are no subdivision levels and you mask part of your model, go to Transpose, take the gizmo, hold down Control, Shift, click and drag, and that will actually extrude new faces from the unmasked geometry. This is a behavior that we had in Transpose before, and it's now also available in Gizmo 3D. So let's take a look now at the deformers. If we open up the Customize gear again and look down here, we can start to look at some deformers. I like to start with the bend curve. This one's really neat. If I open the bend curve, here you can see that we've got a series of dots running down the length of the object. We have a series of cone operators here. We've got one for symmetry, we've got one for the axis, one for smoothness, and one for resolution. If I change the axis, it changed the direction those curve points run in. If I change the curve resolution, it can increase or decrease the number of dots. So if I grab one of these curve points, I can start changing the shape of this cylinder. So let's make kind of a horn. Each one of these points has its own set of curve handles here of cones. So if I grab this one here, Scale, I can bring this down to a point. And if I take Twist, I can start twisting it. Go to the next point here, we can start twisting this as well. We can start moving these. Now maybe I want to scale this up, so I start scaling these up as we get further towards the base of the horn. There we go. Now I can increase the resolution of the curve here if I want to make more specific changes. And I can use this one here to adjust the smoothness. This changes the interpolation between those curve points and helps smooth out those changes. I can always reduce the number of curve points if I want to make a big shape change. Maybe we want to make this a big sweeping horn. Maybe I want to change its sweep through space here, so I'll increase the number and add a little bit of a forwards and backwards sweep here, like maybe a ram horn or something, or a buffalo horn. When I'm happy with it, I'm going to smooth that out again. There we go. When I'm happy with it, I click the custom gear icon and then click Accept. Now those changes have been applied to that primitive. Let's take a look at another primitive now. I'm going to go into the custom gear and I'm going to select the polysphere. And because I'm on the horn will now disappear. If I wanted to keep both of them, I would need to duplicate it as a subtool. So I would need to duplicate this and then select a polysphere. Now I would be able to keep both of them. So here we can change the resolution of our sphere in any direction. I'm going to go ahead and go into our deformers now, and I want to look at the extender. The extender is quite cool. The extender allows us to extend or extrude from this blue center point here. So the blue center point, if you hold down the shift key, you can actually position this anywhere you want along any axis. We'll just keep it at the center for now. I'm going to click and drag, and what that does is it extends and adds that new extrusion pattern inside there. If I grab this handle here, that's inflate. I can set that to 0. I can bring it in if I want to inset this. I can bring it out if I want it to be more like kind of a strap running around. If I zoom in here, you'll see that there's actually a double edge or a double line along each edge. That just shows us that we've got creasing there. What creasing does is it makes those edges hard when we smooth it. I can turn that on or off using this slider here. So I'll show you what this does. If I were to press the D key, that gives us what's called a dynamic subdivision, which we'll talk about in a lot more detail when we do our Z-Modeler class. But here you can see that it's giving us a nice sharp band running around this object. Press Shift D to turn that off. So let's do another one. We just did this in the y-axis. Let's do another one here. I'm going to click and drag, and you see that that automatically just expands another one. It gives us a really nice strap extension running up the top and bottom. Now if I grab the center point and move it down, if you hold down the shift key, you can actually sort of constrain it to an axis. I can move that up and down. Now as I move down, ZBrush will update the topology, so you might get kind of ugly topology in some areas. But here we go. Now I can also move this left and right. So let's go ahead and just move that down just a touch. There we go. Then when I'm happy with that, you can come up here and there's some other options here. We can change our symmetry style. Right now it's set to mirror. I can set it to parallel if I want to. I can change my X resolution. That changes the number of subdivisions. I can change the resolution here, and that again updates the number of subdivisions down that strap. When I'm happy with it, click the gear and click accept. So let's take a look at another modifier now. I'm going to go into the gear and I'm going to select Deformer. Deformer is a lot of fun. It's basically a freeform lattice that you'd be familiar with from other programs maybe. It's a really fun and cool way of deforming a mesh. So here you can see we've got Z symmetry turned on. So let's turn on the floor plane here and just see where we are. Oops. Let's close out the draw menu. Here we go. Awesome. There we go. So that's the x-axis there. So I'm going to go to X here. I am going to turn X to mirror. There we go. Actually, let's do it this way. Here we go. We've got Z-axis set to, if we mouse over this, you can see it's set to 1. That's parallel. I'll set it to 2. That's mirror. So what that means is if I grab a control point here, it's going to update it on the opposite side. If I set it to parallel, they run parallel to each other. So what that means is if I grab a point, the other one moves in the same direction. So we're going to set it to mirror. Now all these points are lit up. So what that means is if I grab the corner of my gizmo here, I can move all those points at the same time. But that's not really what I want to do. I'm going to clear the selection by control clicking and dragging on the background. So no points are now selected. I'm going to shift click on each of these points because I only want to select these points on the bottom. Now I'm going to click on the corner of the gizmo and I can move these in like that. I can go ahead and clear those and then I can move these in. So I want to add a little bit of a taper to this. So let's take a look at it back here. I'm going to clear my selection, and I'm going to go ahead now and grab these points here. Move them in. Let's clear this selection, and let's move these in. So we're giving it kind of a bit of a squash. I'm going to grab these points right here, clear our selection. We'll grab these points just by control clicking and dragging, or control clicking on the individual points, or shift clicking, I mean, on the individual points, and then we can pull these up. There we go. Now when I'm happy with those changes, I'm going to go ahead and click the gear and click Accept. So let's go back to our deformers here. We've done Extender, we've done Deformer, we've done Bend Curve. Let's check out Bend Arc. So if I go to Bend Arc here, I can grab any one of these. We don't want to twist it yet. We don't want, we're going to grab this and drag it, and that's going to bend it around that arc. Now if I change the radius, I can change the radius of the arc that I'm working on, and I can twist it along that arc as well. But I'm going to leave the twist turned off. I just want to give it a bit of a twist of an arc bending backwards. Now we can come over here and we can do the same thing. We can bend it along this arc. And we can bend here. When I'm happy with those changes, click the gear icon and accept. So let's take a look now at the flatten modifier. Flatten is really neat. It's basically a modifier that does what the clip curve brushes do. If I grab this handle and then pull it out, everything gets flattened to that point there. If I pull it the opposite direction, I can start to clip the geometry based on that modifier. Now this works just like the clip curve brushes, so if I start to overextend past where it starts curving back, I will get these little winged edges, so be careful of that. But if I do it just to this point here, I get a really nice, very cool flat edge there. I can do the same on the bottom. I can flatten the bottom here. Beautifully affected. Now this is very interesting. This cone here will control whether or not it gets sliced. Right now it is set to slice, so if we look at the edge, it gives us this nice slice there. Let's see if I can't get that cone on screen so we can update it. Watch what happens if I turn the slice off. It's a very ugly edge. If I turn it on, it gives me a nice slice, keeping a nice sharp edge there. When I'm happy with that, click Accept. Now let's take a look at multi-slice. Multi-slice is really neat because it adds multiple edge loops along a plane defined by the center point here. So once again, we've got the ability to turn creasing on or off. I'm going to click and drag click and drag here and here to bring my slice width up. I'm going to turn my slice divisions down. Now if I click and drag this blue point, the center, I can move where that slice goes. You see the topology updates as I move it. So I can run that slice right through those spaces right there. Of course, I can turn the creasing on or off. Zoom in so you can see that better. Creasing on, creasing off. Here we've got Z resolution, slice width, X resolution, and then the same for Y. So let's go ahead and this time instead of accepting it, we're going to reset it, and that gets rid of those changes. Now lastly, let's look at twist and taper. Taper is here. It does exactly what you would think. It tapers the mesh. Then I can use this slider here to control the exponent. So that basically controls the fall off. Do the same thing here. We can taper this. We can taper this. And let's taper this open. When we're happy with that, click the custom gear and accept. Now lastly, we'll look at twist. We come back here, go to twist, and this does exactly what it sounds like. It twists around each axis that we select. So I can twist along these edges, I can twist along the front, I can twist along the bottom. It's entirely up to you, whichever one you decide to use. It's very handy, and that one would work really nicely with, say, for example, this horn. So if we go back to our horn, turn off visibility on our other piece, and let's set the twist modifier here. There we go. And we can twist this even further than we had before. Look at that. Maybe we want to add a little bit of twist this direction or that direction. You can create some real interesting effects this way. Click the gear and click Accept. So that concludes our look at the primitives and the deformers. The deformers are a huge improvement over the deformers we had before, which were under the Tool Deformation menu. These were basically just sliders with XYZ radial buttons. These deformers are so much more elegant and artist-friendly. The primitives are also very elegant, very artist-friendly, and we're going to revisit these in later videos. This is our basic introduction, but we're going to be looking at these again as we use live booleans and insert mesh brushes. So there's a lot of times that we're going to be able to come in and use these primitives to create complex and interesting shapes just by combining them together in new and interesting ways. So I hope you found this video useful. I'll see you in the next lesson.